tackling tough topics to help you think reasonably about life's most important issues. This is Thinker Sensitive.
This is Chad Graham with Thinker Sensitive. I'm here with Ben Crenshaw. Ben, thanks for being on the show today.
Great, thanks, Chad.
Yeah, I want to just dive right in. Let's talk about Brett Kavanaugh and these circus hearings, these confirmation hearings. Have you been keeping up with this at all?
Yeah, I have a little bit. I'm not a legal scholar or a lawyer or anything like that, so I don't know a lot about Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
But I have been reading some of the news and just noticing the hoopla and the controversy around it. So yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like we're both just citizens, concerned citizens today. But it does seem like these confirmation hearings are absolute circus, mayhem, anything goes, random protesting is occurring. We can't keep order in the courtroom. We have, congressmen going off book, talking about other political posturing. I mean, it just seems like a circus in there. Is that what you see?
Yeah, it is. And this is really indicative of some of the ills of our political order right now. So, part of the problem is that some scholars have noted that Congress has kind of abdicated its responsibility in doing a lot of the lawmaking and legislating. So this gets pushed to the executive branch, the president, and also the Supreme Court. And there's also the dynamic that the other two branches of the government have just kind of seized power for themselves.
Yeah.
And so one of the problems is that we've seen really since the 1960s and 70s with Roe v. Wade in 1973 and Casey and Planned Parenthood in 92, and then again with Obergefell in 2013, is some massive public policy decisions have been decided at the highest legal level.
Yeah.
And these are far-reaching, they're absolute, and they're extremely difficult to reverse, and they touch everybody. So they touch businesses, they touch individuals, they touch families, they touch educational institutions, civic institutions. And so this is why, this is so controversial. If you change the balance of the court from a 4-4 liberal conservative and one swing vote, which was Kennedy, and you change it up and now you have a 5-4 conservative majority, it's like all of a sudden social policy could change at the highest level, reversing cases that have been longstanding and so forth. So that's the motivation for not just the circus in the Congress, but citizen protest and involvement and outrage and so forth.
Don't you think, Ben, given everything that you just said, that kind of lends itself to the credibility of the idea of confirming originalists? Because even when you talk about this idea of balancing a Supreme Court, we need the Supreme Court to be, as best they can, as best as humanly possible, an objective interpreter of the law. And so if we have written laws, and we defer to this court to make decisions based upon the Constitution and based upon our laws, shouldn't we really focus in on confirming candidates who take that responsibility very seriously, have a record of sticking to the letter of the law despite political leanings or ideologies? Isn't that just kind of making the case for us for nominating and confirming originalist Supreme Court justices?
Yeah, I do agree with that, Chad. The whole talk about balancing the Supreme Court is again an indication that the Supreme Court has gone wire.
Yeah.
And this gets to the issue of competing constitutional or jurisprudential philosophies and so forth. But if you read the Federalist Papers, you'll find that Madison, Jay, and Hamilton talk about this idea of competing factions, and that instead of trying to get rid of factions altogether, political factions, which we would call political parties, the idea was that you were going to balance them. So you're going to give one faction power, another faction with different interests and competing interests, a different power, and they're going to kind of balance each other out, so maybe swing one way and then the other way. Well, this is what Congress is for.
Right.
Not the court.
The legislative branch has that focus.
Exactly. So this is why, it's supposed to be Republican, Democrat, or independent, or libertarian, conservative, and progressive, whatever, in Congress. This is where the people are supposed to hash it out. Right. This is the public forum, the assembly, where our elected representatives go and we hash out the issues of the day. Once the laws are passed by the Congress and then signed into law by the president, then the court's supposed to make decisions based upon what the law already says.
Law.
Exactly. And so that gives rise to the whole idea of originalist jurisprudence.
Yeah. And the safety mechanism there and the balancing of powers is if Congress produces a law that is ruled upon in such a way that's unlivable for the people then, again, re-elect Congress members that can go back and rewrite laws or make new laws to course correct the laws that were poorly written or poorly executed or the bad philosophy that was inherent in the law before.
Yep.
It's not supposed to take place in the courtroom. The courtroom is where we adjudicate as to whether or not people are abiding, companies, individuals, whatever, are abiding by the laws set forth by Congress.
Right, or if present legislation is in keeping with the Constitution or something like that. And part of the problem here is that, obviously we have problems in Congress with legislation getting gridlocked, but with the Supreme Court, it's very rare to see a complete turn, an overturning of a previous law. Yeah. Laws set precedent. Supreme Court decisions set precedent, and judges are very reluctant to go back on previous decisions. And so this is kind of like, you don't want to say set in stone because something like Dred Scott was overturned and so forth, but it's much, much more difficult once a law is decided on and kind of its interpretation is closely fixed by the Supreme Court, the people have very little recourse in terms of, besides another, Supreme Court appeals. You've got to file another lawsuit. So it's much better to hash these things out in Congress. These are the bodies that are where that's supposed to happen.
Going back to the tether of Brett Kavanaugh.
Yes.
The supposed bombshell that was dropped by Mr. Booker. It was like a week ago now. The dossier that had a bunch of Kavanaugh's opinions and rulings that were, I think, one of the quote unquote worst opinions or decisions that he had was ruling against someone who made a complaint that an officer violated the Fourth Amendment by zipping someone's coat or something like that.
Right.
It seems like the body of work that Brett Kavanaugh has been able to produce overall seems to convey an originalist body of work of judiciary. So he's exemplified this quality of being able to decide cases with objectivity and a real reverence for and a keen legal mind to interpret the law well and accurately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everything that I've read about him in terms of people who have clerked for him or have been his students or have worked along with him, I think it was I think Yale was his alma mater that released a letter of commendation with all kinds of signers. Everybody speaks extremely highly of this man. There's no reason to think that he wouldn't be confirmed. Right. There's nothing clear. These charges brought up by Booker and so forth are spurious, and so there's nothing clearly to show that he's disqualified from being a good Supreme Court justice. And he's followed what's known as, I think it's like the Sandra Day O'Connor kind of precedent of not letting his opinions on how he would rule come out in these confirmations hearing, which is wise because he doesn't know.
Right.
That's a prudent, wise judge who says, I'm not going to take a priori policy prescriptions or opinions and just
out of thin air.
Yeah, and then make the case match my opinion. Instead, I'm going to have to rule in accordance with the specifics of this case. So he's doing exactly what he ought to do, and I don't see any reason why he won't be confirmed.
So are we now in an age, though, where I have to believe that before Brett Kavanaugh's name ever appeared on a short list for Donald Trump, If any sort of legislator on either side of the fence met Brett Kavanaugh at a ball game, no pun intended, if they met him at a ball game or they met him at a dinner party or at a DC event, they would have had respect for him because that's his reputation. He has earned that respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we in an age now where simply because someone like Donald Trump nominates a Brett Kavanaugh, it essentially destroys his reputation with half the country who would like to see Donald Trump impeached or doesn't think that Donald Trump should be president or didn't vote for him? I didn't, but is that the age that we're in now?
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like we are. And, people who hate Trump, it's difficult to overcome that because everything that he touches, they hate as well. That's unfortunate. We have to be level-headed as citizens and be able to kind of put Trump to the side and judge Kavanaugh on the basis of who he is and the decisions he's made. And that's kind of the impartiality that we're called to as citizens, the fairness that we need to treat others with. But it's just extremely difficult in this.
I'm discouraged at the idea that simply because Kavanaugh was nominated by Donald Trump, that completely, just that fact alone is enough to completely wipe out any sort of critical thinking or any reason to critically evaluate Kavanaugh based upon his own merits, based upon the reputation he's been able to maintain in an incredibly competitive profession. Just being honest there. It's absolutely remarkable, the career that he's had. I think Al Mohler, I was listening to his podcast the other day, and he said I think he might have been quoting somebody, so I might butcher it here. But someone from the left said that nominating and confirming Kavanaugh would basically entail that the Heritage Foundation got their seat on the Supreme Court bench. I just think that's incredibly reductionistic and unfair to any candidate. What do you think?
Well, it's the wrong standard by which to judge these people. And it just shows that those who are judging Kavanaugh on the basis of his association with the GOP don't understand what a Supreme Court justice is supposed to be and do. So it's an indication of ignorance or who knows what exactly in terms of the American populace not understanding the nature of our republic. And the purpose of the three branches of government and what the judicial branch is supposed to be doing. So, it just plays right into this identity politics, this party politics, this kind of whatever it takes, winner takes all kind of idea. And that really goes to the deep, deep, deep political, philosophical divides in our country right now. We are very fractured. And this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, the beginnings of the rumbling, the evidence, the manifestation of those deep fractious divides right now.
So you and I are everyday Joe citizens. What do we need Congress to do in a confirmation hearing? What job are they supposed to be playing? We know that we see the political posturing that's taking place. We see so many of them with an eye to 2020. Thinking about what's going to look good then, right?
Yep.
What do we need them to do today?
Well, we really need we need Congress to do two things. We need Congress to take a look at a nominee's character. Number one, are they the type of person that has the temperament and the character to be able to be a judge? And being a judge is extremely difficult. Not only does it take incredible knowledge of the law and of American history, but you have so many people vying for your allegiance, your trust. I cannot imagine the kind of pressure, possibly bribery, all kinds of things that these judges face to rule in a certain way. So it takes incredible fortitude, honesty, and integrity as an individual at this state in our country's history to be a good judge. So they need to look at character, number one. And then two, obviously, they just need to look at the record. They need to look at the record of the judge because, there is a debate. I talked about competing jurisprudential philosophies, and kind of the two are originalism or a living constitution. And I don't think anybody who studies American history can come away without the conviction that originalism is the way the founders were believe the Constitution should be interpreted. So basically interpreted according to how the authors intended it to be understood. And we can know that because they left a lot of their writings and speeches and such.
And the history of jurisprudence also lends itself to that just basic fundamental idea that we write laws so that way they can be interpreted based on their original meaning.
Yes. Yeah. The whole living Constitution, kind of goes back to Oliver Wendell Holmes and the early 20th century and the rise of legal realism and the idea that a law doesn't have any meaning or content until the judge kind of speaks it into existence. So that allows you to kind of like make it up as you go type of thing. That's a little bit of a simplification, but see, so Congress is supposed to judge the nominee on the basis, at least their record, on the basis of how well are they abiding by this originalist jurisprudential philosophy in their judgments and their hearings and decisions and so forth.
Are they competent to sit on the highest bench?
Exactly. Will they be faithful to the Constitution? Will they be faithful to their job to uphold and judge or rule about current legislation, whether or not it's in keeping with what the Constitution and the amendments say? So that's kind of the role of Congress, but like you said, it's become the circus show of one-upmanship and political posturing for the next election cycle and so forth. So even Congress itself doesn't seem to understand what it's supposed to do, and that's why we had that excellent little speech by Ben Sass a couple days ago.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it was great.
That. This is Ben Crenshaw and Chad Graham waiting for the nation to heal. This is Thinker Sensitive. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Thanks, Chad.
For more Thinker Sensitive content, visit thinkersensitive.com. Be sure to find us on iTunes and YouTube as well.